Right now, my signature program, Scribe School, is open for enrollment, but not for long. This is the robust program that will take you from knowing nothing or a little bit about hieroglyphs to reading the common text you're going to actually see in museums, online, and on trips to Egypt. And there's a very special bonus available right now for the first 25 people who sign up by Friday, May 15th. They'll get the special bonus Hieroglyph a Day planner. This planner is not available anywhere else. It's not sold separately. This is the only way to get it. So you'll want to check out all the details and grab your spot in Scribe School at scribeschool.com. Welcome to Voices of Ancient Egypt, the podcast for people who don't just want to learn about ancient Egypt, but want to understand it on a deeper, more meaningful level. I'm Melinda Nelsonhurst, an Egyptologist with a PhD in the field and years of experience teaching at the university level, working in Egypt, and training students around the world to read real ancient Egyptian texts. I've spent decades studying this civilization in a traditional academic setting so you don't have to, and so you can access knowledge that's usually locked behind academic walls. This podcast brings ancient Egyptian history, beliefs, and language to life, and shows you that learning hieroglyphs is possible, no matter your age, background, or schedule. So whether you want to read hieroglyphs in museums, on social media, or on your next trip to Egypt, you'll find the tools, stories, and encouragement to make it real right here. Let's hear the voices of the ancient world together. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm really excited to bring you another wonderfully interesting artifact, or really group of artifacts with text on them today. And what you're about to hear is a great example of the work that we do in my next level hieroglyphs program, Master Scribes. We get into reading higher level texts in the program like historical accounts, stories, the Book of the Dead, heart scarabs, and letters, just like the letters we're going to talk about in today's episode. Master Scribes is my 6-month group program for learning to read next-level hieroglyphic texts, and it's opening for enrollment very soon. This program will take you from reading some of the most common texts from ancient Egypt to reading next-level texts with confidence. And we do this through an innovative curriculum and tons of support from me. It's like having an Egyptologist in your back pocket. Now, space is very limited due to this high level of support with me, so you'll want to jump on the waitlist now at masterscribes.com to be ready for when applications open soon. So back in the winter of 1921 to 1922, the Theban expedition of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, directed by a man named Herbert Winlock, was excavating the tomb of an ancient Egyptian man named Messech, who was a lower official and had his tomb cut into basically the side wall of the terrace of the tomb of a higher-ranking man named Ipi. Now, when the excavators entered the tomb, it was full of debris, a jumble of items, everything from clay pots to construction materials to scribal materials. At the end of the entrance corridor, they found a sealed mud brick wall. Breaking through that mud brick wall, they found the corridor leading to Messech's burial chamber, where his wooden coffin still lay. But this isn't a story about a fantastical tomb full of treasures. As far as elite tombs cut into the rock go, this one is pretty modest. There was definitely no peeking through an opening in the wall and saying that you saw wonderful things here. No, what we're concerned with here actually is the rubble that the excavators found used as a ramp between the mud brick wall and the burial chamber. This ramp was made up of construction debris, with a curious selection of other items mixed in. It seems that many of these items had originally sat outside of the corridor, but were swept into the corridor with the building debris when the ramp was being constructed. Now, when excavators actually dug through and sorted all of this debris, they found a variety of items, including a ball of string, scraps of blank papyrus, and a small broken box. All of this, together with ink, seal impressions, and other items, must have been part of an active scribe's kit. But one particular set of objects concerns us here, the inscribed papyri that they found in the rubble. The papyri contain 5 letters and 4 account documents, as well as some fragments from other documents. All of the intact papyri were still folded 2 even were still tied with string and sealed with a lump of clay and pressed with a stamp seal. Together, they gave us an unparalleled window into the life of an ancient Egyptian man and both his personal and financial affairs during the early Middle Kingdom, things that we really very rarely get a glimpse of in the surviving record from ancient Egypt. So these letters, which are now housed in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, are often referred to as the Heqanakht letters because they are letters from a man named Heqanakht writing it back to his household while he was away. So let's talk a little bit about these letters and what they tell us about Heqanakht. And we'll get into also, of course, why I mention him being famous in the title. The letters are full of mostly business matters about farming, leasing land, and grain shipments. And Heqanakht addresses most of his writing home to his employee Meresu, who seems to be sort of the go-between between him and all of the other people working for him. There are smaller portions in these letters addressed to his family as well. And sometimes Heqanakht gives straight, matter-of-fact instructions to Meresu or his family members, but at other times he really scolds them and, both the employees and his family. So in the letter that's referred to as letter number 1, he says to Meresu, "Now, what is this, having Si Hathor come to me with old, dried-up, full barley that was in Jedsut, without giving me those 10 sacks of full barley in new, fresh, full barley? Don't you have it good, eating fresh, full barley while I'm outcast?" So in other words, he's basically saying, what the heck? Why did you send me this old barley that's not useful for me while I'm away from home? And I bet you're pigging out on the great barley while you're still there at home, right? While I'm outcast and not getting any of the good stuff. He then sums up his instructions later in the letter with, quote, "Don't be neglectful about anything I have written to you about. Look, this is the year when a man is to act for his master." So in other words, don't be slacking. This is a year where things are difficult, things are hard. You really need to be doing what I'm saying. He also frequently sounds quite frustrated in the letters. For example, at one point he says, "Don't make me write to you about it another time. Look, I've written to you about it twice already." Now, the reason that Heqanakht wrote these letters was that he was a priest and landowner who had to travel away from home for part of the year to fulfill his priestly duties. And while he was away, his deputy, Meresu, handled business matters for him. So, like I mentioned, he's a landowner, so he was in charge of farming for that land to make his income. And so he had Meresu running that for him, including oftentimes also leasing other lands to work as well, depending on the particular economic situation and what the inundation was like that year. So how much land would actually be plantable and all of that. And he talks about these things in his letters. But the series of letters from Heqanakht that still survive today include not only business matters, but plenty of personal ones too. His wife, Hetepet, who seems to have been probably a newer wife, maybe his previous wife had passed away or something like that, we don't know exactly. But in any case, she had complained to him that other family members were mistreating her. And Heqanakht admonishes them and tells them to correct their behavior in his letters. And this brings us to why Heqanakht is famous, even though you may have never actually heard his name before. It is this family conflict that caught the eye of famous author Agatha Christie. After her friend, an Egyptologist named Stephen Glanville, suggested that she take a look at the papyri because he thought it would interest her for stories. Or as she put it herself, she said she was, quote, bullied into it. Now, Heqanakht's family became the inspiration for Christie's novel, Death Comes as the End, in which most of those family members are picked off one by one. Now, the real drama in Heqanakht's family, of course, was not quite so dramatic as this. It's not about the family members murdering each other and so forth, but it did inspire Christie's whole idea for this. And in the novel, the names are changed. So you probably, even if you've read the book, you might not have even known that this was based on Heqanakht because in the book, he is called Imhotep and his wife, Hetepet, is called Nofret. Now, over 1 billion copies of this book have been sold in over 100 languages. So while you may not have known his name before this podcast episode, Heqanakht and his family are actually enormously famous. And while Heqanakt's real-life troubles were more sedate than Imhotep's in the novel, he certainly had no shortage of conflict back home. So going back to letter 1 that we were talking about before, he tells Meresu that the housemaid named Senen has been mistreating his wife and to make sure that she leaves, that she needs to leave the household. And he says, "Now, what is this? Doing bad things to my wife? Have done with it." And again, in letter 2, this is apparently an ongoing problem because it shows up in letter 2 as well. He tells Meresu and his family, he addresses them all as a group here. "Now, before I came here, didn't I tell you, don't keep a friend of Hetepet away from her, whether it's her hairdresser or her domestic? Mind you about her. Look, that is my wife. The way to behave to a man's wife is known." He also continues to have work-related frustrations in terms of having to deal with drama amongst other members of the household, whether they be people who work for him as part of the household but aren't related, or some who might be potentially related. So at one point, he's talking to Meresu about another man who was part of the group working for his estate, a man named Anubis. And he says to him, "Now, as for all of the possessions of Anubis that you have, give it to him. As for what is lost, replace it for him. Don't make me write to you about it another time. Look, I have written to you about it twice already." So clearly, Heqanakht is hearing about a lot of drama at home. We don't have the letters that he received that prompted these responses, but it's clear that people from home must have been writing to him and complaining about all of these different dramas that were going on and appealing to him for help. There's other sections of the letters also where he outlines what salary everybody is to get, and this is not just for the people working for him all the time, but it also addresses family members and how much they're supposed to get. And Heqanakht goes on to justify the amounts that he said based on the current conditions, which he says are quite bad. He says, in fact, look, they're starting to eat people here. So now he's probably exaggerating here. It's a bit of hyperbole, but the implication is the times are really tough and food is short. So this might be part of the reason for how much drama there is too. Undoubtedly, the family would have had some drama anyway, considering everything that's going on. But if people were feeling sort of neglected and like they weren't getting enough share of the food to eat and stuff, you can see why this would potentially heighten tensions amongst people working for the household as well as the family members. So it really gives us this amazing look into Heqanakht's life and what was going on at that time. And it's a look we generally don't get, even for people really high up like kings or pharaohs, if you want to call them that. And Heqanakht being at the level he was, he's not even that high up in the elite. Now, he's certainly not the poorest either. He owns land, right? And he has a priestly position that pays him part of the year. So he's doing okay. But it's a level of society we very rarely get very much information about. So this is one of those sets of things that was just amazing to have survive all this time so that we can learn about him and his family. And if you liked this episode, this is just a tiny taste of what we do in Master Scribes. Some of these sections that I just quoted for you are actual ones that my students have been reading in the program, and we'll be certainly adding more from Heqanakht's letters as time goes on as well. I'm always adding new curriculum, new practice text to it so that my students always have new fun things to work through. And there's so much waiting for you in the program already. This is just one of the things that people in the program are learning to read in the original Egyptian. And Master Scribes applications open up on March 2nd. Spots are very limited because this is an intimate experience. So you'll want to get on the waitlist in advance if you want to have a first chance to get in. So head on over to masterscribes.com to grab your spot on the waitlist and then be ready to claim your spot on March 2nd.